Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. Thank you for joining me. So 6 days ago, I posted this video right here, Master Gearing with Deadwood. And in that collaboration video, which was a lot of fun to make, by the way, Deadwood came on the channel and he helped me build a new Clan Boss speed tune. The goal of which was to get a 1-key Ultra Nightmare team that was full auto and worked on every affinity. And on the day of recording, it worked great. We got 50 turns, full unkillable. The result was about 101 million damage on 1 key. And that worked perfectly against Spirit Affinity. But I'm here to tell you, it's not working against the other affinities. There's something wrong with this speed tune. No shade at Deadwood Jedi here. Like I said, it worked on the day of. And this is just something that happens. Sometimes you get really close to a speed tune and it kind of works, but doesn't work all the way. And so I wanted to make this video today to help you out if you've ever been in this situation where it seems like a speed tune should work, but doesn't. I think that's a pretty common experience. So in today's video, I'm going to show you my diagnostic process. I'm going to diagnose the problem with this speed tune. I have no idea what it is right now. We're going to diagnose it, and then we're going to fix it. And we're going to get this speed tune that is really awesome all the way to 100% full auto and working on all affinities. That's the goal. I hope you're ready for it. Let's get started. Just a quick reminder that we do have memberships to our YouTube channel. So all you have to do here is go to the main page and click on the join button. You'll get a pop-up here that shows you all of the subscription options for joining and supporting the channel. There are a lot of cool perks that come with membership, so go ahead and check it out. In addition, don't forget to click that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider joining our Discord community. All right, let's go fix a Clan Boss speed tune. There are several places you can start when you begin to diagnose a misfiring Clan Boss speed tune. But regardless of where you start, you're always going to want to have your Clan Boss calculator page filled out and open so that you can reference it. Because you need to see any mistakes that come up in the calculator. You might want to make tweaks and you want to see what the tweaks kind of do to the speed tune. So really the best place to start before you do anything else is to come here to Deadwood Jedi's website, deadwoodjedi.com, and get your speed tune entered into the calculator. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually go through this process. I've got a Demitha speed tune. It's called the Myth-Fu speed tune. So the easiest way to find it here, I could type it into the search bar. Maybe that would be easier, but I'm just going to go here to Demitha on the drop-down menu, and you're going to see that Myth-Fu, I think, is on the second page. I'm going to go down, scroll over, and there's the Myth-Fu. Now I'm just going to right-click on that and open that in a new tab. So this is the actual speed tune. Now I replaced Eris with Elva Autumnborn, and we got Fushan out of the speed tune, and our DPS are Berikin the Fat and Fane. And I'll show you all those champions just a moment. But this is the speed tune that we're using. So I want to go down here to the bottom and just right click on the Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare and Brutal speed tune and pull that up. Okay, so now I have this. So this is not my speed tune, right? This is just the standard. This is like the template that I'm using. So now what I need to do is I also need to open a second calculator page. Usually you just want to open a blank calculator page. So I come back here, I go up to the calculator, and then I just right click on Clan Boss Calculator and open a new tab there. And so now I've got a blank page. So I have these two right next to each other. This is the template, and this is my calculator. Now what I need to do here is I need to start entering my champions and all the speeds and all the gears, and you need to get everything right. You need to perfectly represent what is actually going on in your current speed tune in order to diagnose what might be wrong with it. So there's a lot of stuff that I have to do here, but I have to enter all of my champions. I have to enter the speeds, and I also have to remember to enter, like, the speed aura here is 19% for Elva. Let's go ahead and just put Elva in right now. And then also we want to get the speed for her. So I don't know what that is, but let's say it's 270. And then you want to get the sets in. So let's say she was in 1 speed and perception, and then she's running Lore of Steel. You need all of those things. You need all of those pieces of information to get an accurate representation of what's happening with each champion. So I'm going to go ahead and enter all of my champions. What I like to do when I enter them into the calculator is I like to put them in the order that they are in the team. So don't do it by order of speeds. Do it by order of team placement. So I have entered all of the data. Now, a couple of things. One is I'm on Ultra Nightmare difficulty because that's what I'm shooting for, but we'll also check this against Nightmare and Brutal to make sure it works on all of the difficulty levels. And remember that the important thing to shoot for here when you're trying to copy a speed tune is the true speed. So in this column right here, you'll see there is the build speed. That's the number you enter into the box. And then the true speed is the calculated speed based on the application of the aura and any sets that you've entered, right? So here, when you go and put in the speed, like I said, she's got 2 speed sets and Lore of Steel. So I have to make sure that I have all of those. Okay. Now, if you're wondering, why the speeds might be different from the speed tune. So for instance, if we go over here and look at this one, right, you want to make sure that you're matching up champion to champion, not place to place. So the fact that here Demitha is in, the blue spot, that's not really where she is, right? So actually the leader of this is Fushan. You can see because it's the 24% speed aura. So that means he's actually in the first spot. So this can be a little bit confusing, but I want to match up speed to speed. So Demitha needs to run at a true speed of 314. So if I look at my Demitha, who's actually down at the bottom in orange, right there, she is running at 314.09. And in this one, she's running at 314.19. So there's a slight difference in true speed. But usually if you're within that half of a speed, so like this is really running at 314, right? As long as I'm 313.51 or better, up to 314.49 or slower, that should be good. Now, that's not 100% of the time, because if there's another champion that's right next to that champion in terms of speed, then who goes first could matter. But there's nobody that close to Demitha in the speed tune, so I don't have to really worry about it. Okay, and then I matched up all the other true speeds. Again, remember, I have a different speed aura because Elva is my speed aura lead, so it's 19% instead of Fushan at 24%. So I had to adjust the speeds there as well. And this is what Deadwood and I did together. And as you can see, it comes into tune on turn 5, and it works all the way through. It does work on all affinities, and it seems like a perfect speed tune. Now, there may be an issue here. I'll get to that in just a minute. But this is the first thing that you need to do. Remember also to put in your AI. So here you can see that Seeker has a 1-turn delay on his A2, and Demitha has a 1-turn delay on her A2 as well. You also have to have the skill priority the right way. So make sure you copy that from the template, whatever template that you're using. Okay, so I've got everything in perfectly, and this is in fact the way my clan boss works. So what's possibly wrong? Well, this was the first step of the diagnostic to see if the speeds were a problem, right? And the speeds don't seem to be a problem. So let's move on from that for a second. We'll come back to it, because when you're diagnosing a problem, you have to go through like a checklist, and there are a lot of things that you have to check. So let's go into the game and start looking at the champions, thinking about the things that could mess up the speed tune. Okay, so here we are in my roster, and I'm taking a look at Elva. Now, when you have a speed tune, every skill needs to land at a particular moment in time for the clan boss calculator to like predict how it's going to play out. So if you have anything in your kit, anything in your roster, anything in your masteries, anything in your gearing that could potentially change when a buff lands or when a skill goes off, that's the most likely reason to mess up a speed tune. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to look at the masteries. Now, there are 2 dangerous masteries for Elva. Actually, there are 3 dangerous masteries for Elva. The first one is rapid response. So this has a chance of increasing turn meter when a buff cast by this champion is removed or expires. So she casts buffs. She casts continuous heals. She casts increased speed. She casts a block debuffs. So she has a lot of buffs. So if this mastery were on, that would change her turn meter, and that would change the skill order. She doesn't have that. Another mastery that could mess things up would be Cycle of Magic. This could, again, change when the cooldown comes up, thereby changing when a skill gets applied, and that would mess her up, but she doesn't have that. The last one that could actually mess her up, and this is one that I think would fly under the radar for most players, is this Lasting Gifts. This has a 30% chance to extend the duration of a buff cast by a champion. So if you extend her increase speed, and it's supposed to fall off at some point, it won't fall off at that point, right? It'll be extended 30% of the time for an extra turn, and that could potentially speed your champions up too much. And this could throw off your speed tune as well. So you want to avoid all of those things. Now, this particular mastery, Spirit Haste, doesn't actually have any effect in an unkillable speed tune, right? Because nobody's going to die, and this increases her speed for each dead ally. So I don't have to worry about this. I can use Spirit Haste very comfortably. This could prove valuable in other content like Hydra, but it's not going to affect a clan boss speed tune. Now, there are a few other masteries that could cause a problem. One of the things you want to watch out for is the 2 counterattack skills. There are some champions who get turn meter fill on their A1. If you have any of those champions, you have to watch out for counterattack. Counterattack can actually throw off those champions because they're getting more turn meter fill than expected. And again, it's not predictable. It's not 100% of the time. It's not 0% of the time. If it's anywhere in between, from 1% to 99%, you've got a chance of changing the turn order and breaking the speed tune. Okay, so it looks like Elva is clean, but I have to do this check with all of my other champions. So let's go ahead and look at some of the other champions that are in the speed tune. One is Demitha. Again, this would be the same thing. The same exact masteries would cause problems, but we don't have rapid response. We don't have Cycle of Magic. So it doesn't look like there's any issue here with Demitha's masteries. Likewise, if you had refresh amulets, like that could be a problem. Again, you know, if you're changing the cooldowns, but I don't have any refresh amulets on any of these champions. So that would be another thing to watch out for. Anything that changes when a skill drops is a problem, but no problem here. Now I have 2 Seekers. I got to remember which one is the clan boss. This is the clan boss Seeker. He's at the right speed. The only thing that could happen here potentially would be like a refresh. Again, I want to look at the masteries. So in this particular case, Cycle of Magic would be a problem. For him, rapid response is not a problem. It doesn't matter if he extends the duration of his buff because it's just an increased attack buff. It's not a speed buff. But Cycle of Magic could potentially cause a problem where he would increase turn meter back to back, and that would break the speed tune. So again, that could be a problem, but doesn't look like it is here. Now, the last 2 champions are Farrakhan the Fat and Fane. And for these champions, because they're damage dealers and they don't affect turn meter and they don't affect buff extension, they don't affect anything like that, it's unlikely that any mastery would cause a problem here. So for instance, in this particular case, I do have Cycle of Magic on Farrakhan the Fat. That means he's more likely to get back to his ally attack more quickly. Now, this could be a problem, again, like counterattack for a champion that had turn meter fill on their A1. If you had somebody with turn meter fill on the A1, then you don't want Cycle of Magic here on the ally attacker because that could, again, mess up the turn order. But I don't have anybody like that on the team. And so more ally attacks generally just means more damage. And so I do want this particular mastery on Farrakhan at this time, but that's something to watch out for, right? To recognize there are sometimes you can use something like this or like a refresh accessory, and sometimes you can't. Depends on the champion and it depends on the team composition. Again, I can't have Relentless at all, right? There's a difference between refreshing a cooldown and taking another turn. If I take an additional turn at any point, then I could potentially drop my buffs, my speed buff or my unkillable buff, whatever it happens to be. Now, Seeker does have an extra turn mechanic, but that was already plugged into the calculator. The calculator understands that extra turn mechanic because it's predictable. We know 100% of the time when it's going to go off. A Relentless set that only procs 18% of the time is not predictable, and so that could throw things off. So if you have a Relentless set on a champion, you want to make sure that you can actually use a Relentless set in that particular speed tune, and you cannot do it with the Myth Fu speed tune. So I've checked all of the speeds are correct. I've checked all of the masteries are correct. So why is the speed tune breaking? This is going to get a little bit trickier. So let's go back to the calculator for a moment, and I want to point something out. Okay, so after looking at this for a while, I noticed that there are two potential problems. I don't know which one is happening. And the best thing I could do is actually run a battle, not quick battle, just run a battle in the clan boss and actually watch the fight unfold and see where it breaks. But it's good to have an expectation, of what might happen. And so I've noticed two potential problems. One here is on turn 2. So in the upper right-hand corner here, you can see that Seeker, the bottom turn of Seeker, his A1, he actually drops the block debuffs buff, right? So this actually comes off. So if you see that the icon is faded, that means it is falling off after this turn. So when the clan boss stuns here, Seeker doesn't have any of these buffs up. If he gets stunned there, which he might against the Force Affinity clan boss or against the Void Affinity clan boss, then that would break the tune right away. It would literally break right here. It might still function like moderately effectively for 25, 30 turns, which is what's happening. I'm getting about 30 turns sometimes. And so even untuned, right, even improperly tuned, it will still work for a while. But that would be a place where it could break right away. So this is a problem. This is a problem. I want to change this. The second thing that I'm noticing is that we are running a lot of buffs. So in several places, you can see it on Seeker here on turn 6. You can see it again in Seeker on turn 10. There are times where he's getting 10 buffs up. The buffs that you see are the buffs that your champion has when that turn fires. It is not the number of buffs that they have when the clan boss goes. So think about it this way. All of the green icons are when the buff is being applied, right? And then we know that when the icons are faded, those buffs are falling off. So down here at Demitha, right, at the bottom of turn 7, Demitha puts up her block damage buff. That actually applies to everybody, right? All 5 champions will have that block damage buff, but you can see it's not actually on anybody else's bar, right? It's dropping off of everybody. Some people don't have it. So it has to be applied here on Demitha's turn. That means I know that the buff is going up, but the calculator doesn't actually show it to me there because it's showing the buffs on everybody's turn so you can track what they actually have on their turn. So because I have only 10 spots where buffs can go up, it's possible that somebody has 10 buffs when the block damage buff gets applied. And that means they wouldn't get the block damage buff because they have no space on their bar for it. And as a result, they might not be unkillable. And if anybody takes a hit and actually dies, then that would break the speed tune. And most of these champions are not built very tanky because they're for an unkillable team. So they don't need to be tanky, right? They're built for damage. So it's likely that that could be another issue. So I have 2 issues here, right? I have one is potentially the stun on Seeker, and then 2 is potentially not getting the buffs out that I need to get out. Now, the buff issue is going to be harder to fix because if we have too many buffs, we just have too many buffs. If there are too many buffs in the team, there are just too many buffs in the team. We can try a couple of things. One is we could potentially turn off a skill, right? If there's a non-critical buff that comes out, we could potentially turn it off. We could try that. The other thing is we could see if there are any additional buffs that are coming out through masteries or gear that, or even skills that we can maybe make more predictable or eliminate. So we'll talk about that. But let's go ahead and look at this particular issue here with the stun, right? Now, what I would like to do is find a way to prevent that. The best way to prevent that is to have the block debuff buff up the whole time. So if we could get this tune into tune faster, not waiting until turn 5, but if we could get it into tune on turn 1 or turn 2, then we wouldn't have to worry about that first stun, right? Then the tune would be in tune for the first stun and it would be wiped away by Elva's cleanse. So we're going to try that. Now, the way to do that is just to mess with the speeds of each champion a little bit at first. So what I tend to like to do is I try to go up a few. I'll go up like 3 or 4 or 5 speed on each champion, and then I'll go down 3 or 4 or 5 speed on each champion and see how that changes the tune, because we're very close. And it might not work every time, but sometimes it will. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go faster on Elva, and you can see, okay, the speed tune breaks here and it doesn't come back into tune. So that means that that increased speed is not going to work. Now I could try going faster because it could come back into tune again. Okay, so here it changed again. You can see the turn order changed, and it does in fact come back into tune with this speed on turn 6. Right, so the question is, do I have the block debuffs buff up for everybody? And again, no, it still falls off a Seeker here, and it doesn't get reapplied. So this doesn't come into tune sooner, it actually comes into tune later, and it doesn't help. So let's go ahead and slow her down. And if I slow her down a little bit, it does still come into tune here on turn 6. But again, we still have the same Seeker problem. So it feels like changing Elva's speed, and here it just breaks. Changing Elva's speed is not going to do it. So I'm going to put her back into her original speed. Let's just go ahead and check it. I think it was... What was her speed? 283.83. 283. Yeah, okay, so it's 263. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process with all of the other champions one at a time. I'm going to reset every champion back to their original speed, change one champion's speed up, 5, 10, down 5, 10. Usually it doesn't take that much. It could take, 2 or 3. And I'm going to try this out and see if I can find a tweak to the speeds that would change the turn order and potentially either get me that block debuffs buff in the right spot, or like move Seeker somehow, like out of that turn order so that it still tunes, but he doesn't have to worry about getting stunned. Okay, good news. I found one. I found one. It was actually a pretty minor change. So originally I had Fane running at 172. And if I speed her up to 175 in build speed, this is, you got to watch the true speed as well. So if I do this, then you can see that it actually comes into tune on turn 2. So Elva will cleanse the slow here at the top of the turn order, right? And then, even though she doesn't quite do like everything the right way perfectly, she's going to be at the top of the turn order on turn 3, right here. So she will cleanse the stun no matter who it lands on. So now we don't have to worry about Seeker getting stunned. He still doesn't have the buff up, but she will cleanse here. Now the question is, does Elva get stunned, right? Because if Elva got stunned, then this cleanse wouldn't work. But she does have the buff up. She has the block debuffs buff up after her turn. So she can't be stunned, right? If it lands on her, she will still be able to take her next turn and, cleanse everybody and put up her increased speed. So yeah, this actually doesn't tune on turn 2. It actually tunes on turn 3. But we've changed turn 2 enough that it now works. And again, it comes into tune just fine. So I'm going to have to speed up Fane by 3. Now, potentially, this could fix all of the problems. Maybe the number of buffs that we were getting up isn't an issue, but I still suspect it might be. So now what we want to do is go back to the game. We're going to change that speed on Fane, but we're also going to look for any extraneous buffs that might pop up. Okay, so right away here on Elva, I've noticed something. She has 2 special artifacts, accessories. One is that she has a revenge ring. Now, normally this isn't a major issue. Like, revenge is good on her. The reason is on her A1, she places a continuous heal. So when she gets a revenge attack, she places additional continuous heals. But in this particular fight, that extra continuous heal may fill up our debuff bar. I'm sorry, our buff bar. It's the same thing. Our buff bar on somebody, on an ally that we don't want to have a full buff bar. So as a result, this revenge ring, which only fires 5% of the time, may break a speed tune. And that could account for the variability in my results. Sometimes I'm getting 20 million, sometimes I'm getting 60 million. Because it's only 5%, you don't know where it's going to break the speed tune. So I probably want to get rid of this revenge accessory. The other thing that I notice is I also have a blood shield amulet. Now, a blood shield amulet gives her a shield after every attack. she is attacking every single clan boss go, right? Because she's going 3-1. So she's always going to get one attack in. So she's always going to have this shield up. And as a result, potentially, she might be not getting a buff because, again, this fills the buff bar. So I need to remove both of these accessories. Now, on some champions, Revenge might be okay, right? But the Blood Shield is really iffy in this particular speed tune because I'm filling up the buff bar so much. So I want to remove those two accessories and replace those. Now I'm going to check my other champions for similar things. So let's go ahead and look at Demitha, because Demitha also has an A1 that places a buff. So you might not know this because this is not something that you typically care about with Demitha, but she places a shield on her A1. And each hit, she could place potentially, I guess, two shields. Each hit places a shield buff for 2 turns equal to 10% of this champion's max HP on the ally with the lowest HP. So she's placing shields. Again, she's got a revenge accessory. So 5% of the time, she might place a shield that you didn't expect. And unexpected buffs are bad. So just like unexpected turn meter fills, unexpected, cooldown refreshes, unexpected buffs also mess up the calculator. So I need to get her out of the revenge accessory. I'm going to check all of the other champions as well, just to see, because we could have Blood Shield rings on other champions. So let's go ahead and look at our Seeker. Seeker has Blood Shield, so the Blood Shield has to come off of him. Farrakhan the Fat also has a Blood Shield, so that has to come off of him. And then we have Fane, and Fane has a Blood Shield. So I need to take off all of the Blood Shield rings and all of the revenge accessories. I could put revenge accessories on my damage dealers. That would be fine. Also on Seeker, that would be fine. Because none of those affect turn meter. They would just give me extra damage. None of them apply buffs. They would just give me extra damage. So revenge accessories are fine there. But I can't have a revenge accessory on Demitha or on Elva. So I'm going to go ahead and make all of those changes. And then we'll make the speed change as well on Fane. And then we're going to try out the speed tune and see if the fixes have worked. I have completed all of the gear swaps. The biggest thing that I wanted to mention here, the only thing that was really tricky, was when I changed the banner on Demitha, because the banner had speed on it, right? The rings don't have speed. The amulets don't have speed. I didn't have to worry about any of those. But when I changed Demitha's banner, I had to make sure that I matched the speed. Now, I was able to find a banner here with 17 speed. Demitha's previous banner had 18 speed. And so I was able to glyph the right way. I had to actually put 1 additional speed onto the weapon here, glyph from 2 speed to +3 speed. And that landed me still at 295, which is where I need to be, right? So as long as I'm at that speed, it doesn't matter how many pieces of gear I've swapped, as long as I land on that speed. We've done all of the gear changes. We've gotten rid of all of the extraneous buffs. So at this point, if the run fails because of a buff, because we fill up a buff bar too much, then it's unavoidable, right? Because we've removed any extra buffs. We removed all the Blood Shield rings. We've removed the revenge, amulets or rings on anybody, or banners on anybody that could have an A1 that might apply a buff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come into Ultra Nightmare. You can see it's Magic Affinity. Now, Magic Affinity has been failing me. And I'll actually show you really quickly. This is the last Magic Affinity result I got. Right, so this is actually 47.35 million. I'm pretty sure that was against Magic Affinity. It might have been against Force Affinity. Actually, I'm not 100% sure. But so this was, Ultra Nightmare yesterday, I think. Okay, so that was why we did the rebuild. Now, I'm keeping the champions in the turn order. That shouldn't change anything. I'm going to take off Quick Battle. I'm going to take off Start on Auto. And we're going to start this fight. Now, what I highly recommend you do here is if you have 2 monitors, especially, have your clan boss calculator up on your other monitor. Be looking at that and watch each and every action. Watch all of your champions' actions. Make sure that they're firing the correct skills at the correct time. And you want to do that for, the first 20 champion turns or so, maybe 30 champion turns. It depends, how many turns they're taking. You want to get through maybe like 2 cycles of the clan boss to make sure that you're actually coming into tune at the right moment. Okay, so here we go. I have my speed tune up, and I'm just going to go, one at a time through this. I'm going to say, okay, what do I need? I'm looking over here. I need my Demitha's A3. That's going to be her block debuff. So make sure that she's doing that. Yep. And then we're going to go through it. Elva's going to do her A2. That's the speed boost. Yep. Farrakhan is going to do his A3, which I think is the ally attack. Yep. And then we've got Seeker's going to A1, not A2. So no turn meter fill there. Good. Feign doesn't matter. Demitha's going to use her A2 now, which is her little mini cleanse and an increased buff duration. Okay. And again, so we would track this every time, but I think I'm just going to let it go because I'm pretty sure that we've got it into tune here. So because I've run this before, I know I don't really have to triple check the turn order. The turn order was correct before. It's just that we were failing a buff somewhere. So, okay, so this was Clan Boss turn 2. Now, it should not stun anybody. Everybody should have their... Well, it could stun somebody. So let's go ahead and watch this. All right, so when the Clan Boss stun comes, see, Seeker's going to drop his buff right now. So this is where if Seeker took the stun before, it would break. But now Elva would cleanse that. Now, Seeker is neutral affinity here, and the 2 damage dealers are weak affinity, so Seeker shouldn't take the stun. But let's see the stun happen so we can see how it would work. Demitha's going to go, and then I think the Clan Boss is going to go. Boom. So if that stun had landed on Seeker, you can see Seeker does not have a block debuffs buff. But that's okay because Elva does have it up. So if she were hit, she would not be stunned. And now she's going to do her cleanse. So it doesn't matter if anybody else gets stunned. As long as Elva doesn't get stunned, in this new tune, right, this tweaked tune, it's not a new tune, by speeding up Feign that 3 speed, we've gotten a slightly different turn order that prevents Seeker's stun, like if Seeker gets stunned, from breaking the speed tune. So now the cleanse comes out, and we should be good. So this should now ride all the way. Now, the next point that could happen is if we have too many buffs on somebody, right? We are close to the maximum number of buffs on Elva. We are close to the maximum number of buffs on Demitha from time to time. So we just want to watch this and make sure we don't go over the 10 mark, right? And then potentially lose a block damage buff. As long as that doesn't happen, we know we're in tune. We don't have to worry about stuns. We don't have to worry about slows and spirit affinity. The only thing that we have to worry about is running out of space on the buff bar. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and if it fails, I'll just stop it. But if not, we'll just see how much damage this does now that it's been tweaked. Okay, so I noticed something. Elva took some damage on the last AoE, which means she's not getting the block damage buff. You can see that she's getting that perfect veil, and then she also has all of the other buffs up. So it's that perfect veil with the continuous heals that could potentially cause a problem. Now, she is sometimes getting the block damage buff and sometimes not. It might not matter. It might not matter, especially against like this affinity. It depends. If she's not getting it when there's a stun, it doesn't matter if she's not the stun target. And she might be tanky enough to survive. But my guess is that this is still going to break at some point. So right now she has that buff up, but let's see. Let's see what happens on the next cycle. It's hard to see her buffs because she and Demitha overlap. You know, like visually they overlap. There it is, right there. Okay. So if we count her buffs right now, she has the increased speed, the block debuffs, continuous heal, increase attack, second continuous heal, that's 5. Perfect veil, 6. Crit rate, I think that's crit rate. It's either crit rate or crit damage. No, the next one's crit damage. Another continuous heal, and she has a shield from Demitha. Right, Demitha's putting out that shield on her. So if Demitha now places her block damage buff, Elva won't get it. Let's watch. Yep, Elva's going to take damage. See, she took damage. So she didn't get the buff. Now this is tricky because Elva's in the lead for that speed aura. I think that might be why she's getting the shield from Demitha, because everybody has full health, right? Everybody has 100% health, and Demitha shields the champions with the least health. And if everybody has maximum health, then it might just be that it goes to the lead. Now, if it just went to the champions with the lowest health, that wouldn't be a problem because Elva actually has a lot more health than everybody else. I think, her HP pool is larger. I think Fane and Farrakhan's is pretty low. So let's go ahead and cycle around and see again if this happens. So the tune is like it's in tune, but we're not getting our buffs at the right moment. Okay, so this time Elva has it. You see she's taking no damage. Now, I don't know if it's on the same attack every time or if it's kind of a little random. I don't know if there's randomness to it or if it's completely predictable. So you can see she has that shield from Demitha. So my guess is the shield's not going to drop off, so she's not going to get the next block damage buff. Yep, she doesn't have it. She's going to take damage. No, that was a stun, so it didn't matter. She wasn't the stun target. Now, she won't get stunned because she does have her block debuffs buff up. But the problem here is she will, at some point, get killed. The damage will be too much. I don't think she can live 50 turns without the block damage buff up. All right, so we're going to watch this, and we're going to wait for Elva to die. We're going to see how far along she dies. Okay, so there we had it. If we look, it was boss turn 25, Elva dies. Now, I was watching the other buff bars, and none of the other buffs fill more than 8 buffs. So anybody else could take some of the buffs. That would work. Let's go ahead and X this out so that we don't use the key. All right, so let's take a look at the buffs that we're getting from Elva, because there are several solutions that we could have. One is we could potentially move Elva out of the lead spot and spread those buffs to other people. But if that other person who was in the lead got all of the buffs, there are continuous heals from Elva, there's a perfect veil, there's a shield, so that might overcome somebody else's buff bar as well, because I do think that other champions get 8 buffs, so we can't drop 3 more buffs on somebody. So let's just look at the skills and see exactly how this works. All right, so the continuous heal goes on the ally with the lowest HP. Now, Elva has 45,000 HP, and I do think Fane has less. She has 39,000 HP, so you would think it would go on to her. But since nobody's losing any HP, I think it counts like lowest HP as lowest percentage HP, and everybody has 100%, so it goes on to the leader by default. So this would be true for anybody else. Anybody that we put in the leader spot will get Elva's continuous heal. I think they'll also get Demitha's shield. I think Demitha's shield works exactly the same way. So then we have to look at the perfect veil. Now, again, this is also places a perfect veil for 1 turn on the ally with the lowest HP at the end of this champion's turn. So what that means is whoever the leader is, they're getting 3 buffs. They're getting the continuous heal, they're getting the perfect veil, and they're getting the shield from Demitha. And all of those can be extended. And potentially, if Elva is attacking more than once, it could be more than 1 continuous heal. So there are a lot of extra buffs that are going onto that leader, in this case, Elva, and that's preventing Elva from getting the block damage buff. So I think we got to cut out buffs. I don't think we can just remove Elva from the leader spot. I don't think that's enough. So we do have buffs that are coming from other champions. We have the increased attack from Seeker, which we can't eliminate because that comes with his turn meter fill. But we also have Farrakhan the Fats buffs. So on his ally attack, he gives an increased crit rate and an increased crit damage buff. And if we just eliminated those and added a damage dealer who has no buffs, then we've eliminated 2 buffs. And that might be enough, because what I was seeing before is people getting up to 8. So let's assume Elva was getting up to 8, and then she was getting those 3 buffs on top of it. That was taking her to 11. If we remove 2, that could drop her back down to 9, which means she'll always have space for that block damage buff. So I think if we remove Farrakhan the Fat and replace him with another damage dealer who brings no buffs. Now, unfortunately, this is going to lose us some damage, right? But we're going to try this. We're going to try to speed tune another champion. So we need to get the exact same speed, I think, for as Farrakhan the Fat. So we need 191 speed. I'm going to have to put that back into the calculator. So I'm going to work on that for a moment. I'm going to pick another champion, see who we can get, and then we're going to try it out again. Be right back. Okay, so very good news. I have a champion who is a damage dealer. He's running at 189. Now, Alil here is not a great Clan Blast damage dealer. He's really an arena champ, but he's a damage dealer with no buffs who runs at the correct speed. Now, this 189 is different than Farrakhan the Fat, but he has a higher base speed than Farrakhan the Fat. So when I put it into the speed calculator, the Clan Boss calculator, the speed works perfectly. I don't have to change the speed. I could glyph 1 or 2 more speed and it would still work. But I'm going to keep him right here at the speed. And all I'm going to do is plug him in to Farrakhan's spot in the speed tune. All right, so we're going to come back here to Ultra Nightmare. We're going to take this team setup. We're going to pull Farrakhan out of this team setup. And we're going to put in Alil. Now, he doesn't need any particular AI at all, so we don't have to change anything. We can just go ahead and plug him in. Now, again, we're going to run this battle. We're going to watch for the buff bars. We're going to see if Elva's buff bar does fill up still, or if it doesn't fill up. If it doesn't fill up all the way, then great. Now, there is one issue here, which is that I built Fane with 70% crit rate because I thought she was getting a crit rate buff. So we could drop significant damage here. But I just want to test the buff bar theory, make sure that we can actually make this fully unkillable and go 50 turns. If it goes 50 turns, even with the reduced stats, it might still be a 1 key. But if not, I can always work on that in the future after this video is over. But for right now, we're just going to test this theory on the buff bar and see if we've actually solved this problem. So again, we could watch. I've got the speed tune on my other monitor, so I can watch to make sure that it's speed tuned. But it does look good so far. Now they do take damage that first couple of AoEs, because we're not to the block damage section yet. All right, so the boss will stun. Again, Seeker won't have the buff up, but Elva does, so it shouldn't be a problem. Elva cleanses, and we're good to go. And now we are in sync. So at this point, we should be unkillable all the way through. So the question is simply, will Elva always get the buff? Okay, that was at the wrong time. Okay, we're out of tune. We're out of tune. I don't know why we're out of tune, but we got to try again. Okay, so now we have to diagnose the allele, right? Because the allele was the only thing that changed and it threw it out of tune. So I'm looking for any turn meter increase, because it has to be a turn meter thing, right? It would have to be a turn meter thing or a speed thing. So let me just double check the speed. So he's 189. He has no perception, no speed gear, nothing like that. So I have him in the calculator correct. Like he's correct in the calculator. And it is tuned in the calculator. So there must be something in his kit that is increasing turn meter. So let's just check his skills. No turn meter fill. Fills his champion's turn meter by 10% whenever they receive a buff. There it is. There it is. So he's receiving tons of buffs. He's receiving tons of buffs. So he is getting tons of turn meter fill. Okay, so I can't use Allele. That's good to know. I was trying to use him because he had the perfect speed, right? He had the 189 speed. I literally didn't need to rebuild anybody. But I'll go look for another damage dealer who I can match, and actually I'll have to change somebody's speed and get him into place. Again, I can't have any buffs. I can't have any turn meter fill. So I missed that passive on Allele. I'll have to try again. Okay, good news again. We have Raz in here who's already built. He's got enough accuracy. He does have a brimstone, which is pretty cool. And he's fully mastered. He doesn't place any buffs. And apparently the Farrakhan the Fat slot in the speed tune is the most flexible. So I'm actually running Raz in here at 212 speed. And when I plug that into the calculator, it still works. So all of the other speeds, the Seeker, the Demitha, the Elva, all of those are very, very specific. But the Farrakhan the Fat spot that we try to leal in, apparently that's a very flexible spot. So I've actually added almost 20 speed here, and the speed tune still, it didn't change at all. It looks perfect in the calculator. So this is what we're going to try. Again, we're watching to make sure it's speed tuned. We're also simultaneously watching to make sure that everybody gets the block damage buff every time. I'm just going to start this one on full auto. Let's see what happens. Again, Razen's skills don't really matter. You can see we're getting that smite out there already, so that's going to be nice. We're going to do extra damage there. 250,000 per hit. Now, I don't know that Razen is built specifically for damage. I could potentially rebuild him. I just chose him because he's got the right speed, and he is built, and he's got all masteries and stuff like that. He was in a Clan Boss speed tune like 2 years ago. He was in the team that first got me to Ultra Nightmare, got me to my Ultra Nightmare 3 key, I think. He was my weekend champion for that. So the nice thing here is he's a different affinity than Fane. He's actually strong affinity here. So he's going to land those weekends a lot. We're going to have more uptime on the weekend, which is nice. Again, Fane is still not at 100% crit rate, so we're losing damage there now that we have Farrakhan out. But we want to make sure that everybody gets the buffs at the right time, and also everybody's speed tuned. So Demitha should put up the buff, and then the Clan Boss should go. So that's good. Everybody had it there, and it is, in fact, speed tuned. We're just going to watch this go for a few turns to make sure that Elva doesn't lose that block damage buff at any point. And if she doesn't, we'll run this all the way through and we'll see what the damage count is. So we can tell that the speed tune is in fact working. We have solved the problem. We have solved the problem. But you can also look and see that the damage isn't quite enough, right? We lost the 30% crit rate buff, the 30% crit damage buff from Farrakhan the Fat. We lost the ally attack. And as a result, we're not doing as much damage here, even with the Brimstone from Razen. It's only a 1-star blessing, so it doesn't pop that often. So we've got the speed tune working. It is fully unkillable. We've diagnosed the problem and we've solved it. So now what I need to do is go back into my roster, build Fane with 100% crit rate, get 100% crit rate on Seeker, make sure the speeds stay the same. I could experiment with like a toxic set, because as you see, the debuff bar isn't getting as full as it did before with Farrakhan the Fat. I could also potentially replace Razen with a better damage dealer or rebuild him for more damage. So the speed tune is now fixed, but the 1 key Ultra Nightmare goal is no longer accessible with the current build. And that's okay. It's there. It is there. I just have to go and get that crit rate and crit damage back and maybe get a couple of other sources of damage. So hopefully this has helped show you exactly how to diagnose a problem with a Clan Boss speed tune. It can be complex. There are a lot of places to look at. The first place to look is the speeds. Make sure that you've entered everything into the calculator correctly. The second is look at those masteries. Make sure you don't have unexpected turn meter fill or cooldown refreshes. Also look at the skills of your champions. Like I missed that passive on Alil. Any turn meter fill or cooldown reduction on your champions is an issue potentially for a speed tune. And then finally, make sure your buff bar isn't getting completely filled like it was here. That's a really unusual problem. I've never come across this before. I've never had this particular problem with a Clan Boss speed tune, but it is a problem that you have to be able to diagnose. So the more frequently you build Clan Boss speed tunes, if you enjoy it, getting into the calculator, getting really familiar and literate with that calculator, and then coming into the game here, being able to diagnose in all of those different screens, whether it's looking at the gear, looking at the skills, or even watching the fight unfold and paying close attention to make sure that you know what is breaking and when. Okay, that is it for me today. Let me know in the comments below. Did you enjoy this? Is this going to help you improve your clan boss speed tuning, or has it convinced you maybe that speed tuning is even trickier than you thought it was? But hopefully not. Hopefully not. Hopefully it tells you that you can, in fact, get really good at this stuff and tweak your speed tunes. Make them work. Get those top tier chests. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out. I have been Colred, and I will see you in another video soon. A quick addendum here. As you can see, I plugged in Dark Kale, and we got our 1 key. 50 turns, 77.53 million. I'm a little bit worried about Force Affinity because I'll have 3 weak affinity champions there, Dark Kale, Seeker, and Elva. Fane will be strong affinity into Force Affinity. We'll see if that'll carry. Fane is still not 100% crit rate. I didn't touch her at all, so I could still rebuild her for more damage. I am completely filling up the debuff bar several times, though, so I'm not sure that a toxic set will help. But Dark Kale, very strong clan boss damage dealer, and does a lot better than Raz in here. As you can see, at almost 25 million, he's actually my #1 damage dealer. So there you have it. Totally fixed. Totally, 100% fixed. Except maybe I have to find a little bit more damage for Force Affinity. We will see. All right. That is truly and completely the end of the video. See you later.